X, on the other hand, still lived in the dark. See, whenever he's in the dark, y'all, don't forget that ninja. Dark means crack. That's what dark means. Dark means dark. Dark place, in a dark place smoking crack. Living in the dark means living somewhere smoking crack. I don't hear nobody out there. Swizz was Wah's nephew. He grew up in the Bronx, but a couple of years after I met Wah, he moved in with his uncle in Mount Vernon. That's when we started hanging together. Swizz was much younger than I was, but he was a good brother to roll with because every night the two of us went out. We were game to get in any dirt we could, whether it was running pockets, knocking delivery men off their bikes, or just leaving everybody broke in a game of dice. Swizz and I were always out on the street looking for the next thrill. One of our favorite pastimes was hopping cabs. See, the key to hopping a cab is to make a few stops before you get to your final destination. Tell the driver where you're going when you first get in. Then along the way, ask him to stop in a store somewhere for a few minutes. Come back, then ask him to stop again a few more blocks up. By the second or third time you get out of the car, the driver will be comfortable with you getting out. So then the next time, you just don't come back. Or you can take the more direct approach. We're hopping you, homeboy. Just take it easy and go with the flow. You normally saved that move for when you needed a cab to join you on a robbery. What? You mean to tell me these fools is using hold the fuck on? These dudes is so broke or crazy that they can't steal a car to go rob somebody? That's what all the ninjas do. They steal a car, then they go rob and steal and pilfer. Now, you mean to tell me these ninjas was pulling capers with cab drivers? Girl, you normally save that move for when you needed a cab to join you on a robbery. An unmarked cab could make for a good getaway car, although drivers often got nervous. No, I'm not going to do that, they would yell from behind the wheel. Then you'd have to put a lot of pressure on them and hit them in the back of the head a few times, but you still had to be careful that when you went to make your move, they didn't pull off on you and leave you stranded in the middle of nowhere with a victim up the street. One time, though, Swizz and I happened to come across this African dude who was as gangster as we were. "Give me $30 and I'll take you anywhere," he said. He heard shiz going down. He heard the shots and everything, but he never budged. He just stayed right on the corner as calmly as a professional. Damn, I hope you got his number. That's networking, brother. He's an asset to the corporation. Once you regularly start coming to a block, you begin to see the social dynamics of that block. Who the hustlers are versus who is trying to do something legit. Who has a valid beef with who and who is on some bullshit. That's important because if you don't know the players in the hood you're rolling in, you are vulnerable to getting caught out there. One day, Wah took me up to 129th Street and introduced me to a producer cat named Grease. Him and his man, Big Stan, had put together a rap crew called NIB, Niggas in Black. They threw a lot of parties in Harlem and ran around the streets battling cats like I did in YO. Grease was only a block ninja, but he knew what he wanted. He couldn't deny the money Wah and Darren were clocking in the neighborhood on the hustle tip or the plans that they had for Rough Riders. He just didn't want to be tied down to anyone. When Wah offered to manage him instead of asking him to sign the more encompassing production agreement that he was talking about before, then Grease agreed. After that, Grease would troop to Powerhouse, that is Rough Riders headquarters. After that, Grease would troop to Powerhouse every day and bang out his music. He'd leave Harlem late in the afternoon, jeans pocket loaded with a bag of weed, and stay in Yonkers until 3 or 4 in the morning. Grease used to rhyme, but after an asthma condition made it difficult for him to flow the way he wanted to, he concentrated on making the music. Some of his tracks were laid back, others were more street, but they all had this grimy, almost eerie quality about them, and they were always very musical. Right away, I could hear that there was more going on in one of Grease's beats than the single loop and samples that I was used to. We did a lot of songs together those early nights in Powerhouse. Joints like Final Call and Against the Grain were 2 of the best. Then Wah would always give him a ride back to Harlem, and he'd sleep and do it again the next day. For the first few years that I knew Darren, he concentrated on his hustle game and let his brother handle most of the music business. But since we came back from Baltimore, he had started spending more and more hours in the studio and quickly developed an ear for the music. Whatever kind of beat it was, Darren had a knack for coming up with the perfect chorus. And like Grease, PK, and the other producers, always had an instinct for what rappers and what flows best matched what beats. Darren always believed in me, and he always knew that Rough Riders had too much talent in one place not to be able to make something happen. We just had to keep working on it. After a few months, Darren was right. Rough Riders' discipline paid off, but just not for me. In the spring of 1996, Rough Riders put ourselves officially on the map by signing Jadakiss, Chic, and Styles, now called the Locks, to a recording contract with Puff Daddy's Bad Boy Entertainment. Oh, that was probably like the worst deal that the Locks ever made, ever. I don't want to do this no more, Puff. Grease was to produce their first single, If You Think I'm Jiggy, and Puff wanted the album fast-tracked for a summer release so that his new group could share in the celebrity spotlight enjoyed at the time by his other artists, the Notorious B.I.G., Mace, Faith Evans, and 112. I didn't need any more hints that my dream wasn't meant to be. This shit ain't gonna happen, Gotti, I said to him one night sitting outside of the studio. I can feel it. This shit ain't gonna happen. It was late. The streets were cold and quiet, and the reality of my 12-year journey was hitting me in the face. Either let me fly or give me death. X, don't worry about it. These label dudes are assholes. I said, ooh, baby. Boy, I love you. You're my everything. I already thought that Ravine was the devil block. It was my darkest place, the place where I committed most of my sins, and I never imagined that it would ever get worse for me there, but it did. Okay, pause. So I was reading comments. You know how I am. I may not respond to all of them, but I definitely read them, right? So I was reading a comment where a person was saying that the reason why DMX's career didn't take off was because of how he moved. You ain't about to get this easy. I'm about to make it hard for you. The universe made it hard for DMX. Because you out here making an ass of yourself, preying on the weak, and you want godly things to happen for you. Boy, I love you. You my everything. So anyway, justice served because they got his ass. He got his ass beat and he had to go to jail. I don't know what he went to jail for. I don't know. You get the book, you read it. Actually, I do know, but you get the book, you read it. He went to the General Hospital and they treated him. They ain't do it good, though. My jaw was wide closed for 3 months. I couldn't eat any solid food. I couldn't chew. I couldn't drink anything that I wasn't able to sip through a straw. And then it couldn't be too hot or too cold, or it would inflame the nerve endings in my mouth. I couldn't talk. Instead, I was forced to make the sounds of words through my clenched teeth and hope that people could understand me. It was a living nightmare. Didn't get any visitors. I didn't see Coley, Buzzy, or any of my other aunts or uncles. Didn't see my sisters, and definitely not my mother. I didn't see Wah or Darren. A friend of mine, Donato, would ride his bike over every few days from School Street to come say what's up. And Butler, a friend of Darren's who I was locked up with in Valhalla, had started rolling with Rough Riders, came by every now and then to bring me soup from the store. So laying in that bed made me realize who cared about me and who didn't. Everybody on the music tip was running with the locks, and it was obvious that most of my family had written me off. I knew that they heard what happened and how bad it was. The story of DMX getting beaten up was all over Yonkers by the next afternoon. But that didn't seem to motivate any of them to knock on the door or even pick up the phone. Fuck you mad because the motherfuckers that you robbed don't want to come visit you? Didn't you say that you did most of your dirt in that neighborhood, the neighborhood that you lived in, and now you want the mother hunchies who you stuck up to come visit you? Boy, get out my face. It's hard to talk when your upper and lower jaws are wired together by metal braces that are glued onto your teeth. You have to move your lips as much as possible to make up for the fact that your tongue has nowhere to go. You drool a lot and have to breathe through your nose. It's difficult to fully pronounce words that have more than 2 or 3 syllables, and you can't talk very loud. But if it was hard to talk, it was almost impossible to rap. While my mouth was still wide shut, Gotti came to Mulford and told me that Ron G's mixtape had helped him finally get the attention of Liar Cohen, the president of Def Jam Records. On the strength of Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt album, Gotti had got his A&R gig at Def Jam. Lou, from the minute he got there, he had been pressuring his bosses to sign me, but for months, the execs had been ignoring him, telling him to focus his attention instead on the new acts they already had in the house, like Trigger and this Brooklyn chick called Foxy Brown. Gotti answered back that Def Jam was being grossly outsold by Death Row and Bad Boy because the identity of the label was lame. I was the perfect person to change it up for them. Once his peoples heard the Ron G tape, they finally listened. So, dog, tell me when you're going to get your wires off, and I'll set a date. That's it. He's the man, Liar jumped up. DMX is the man. What? Who won it? What? I looked around, growling. I felt like I could rhyme forever, but they had heard all they needed to hear. That night was over. My new life. I wasn't down with all that pretty happy-go-lucky shiz. In March of 1997, Puff Daddy suffered through the murder of his man, the Notorious B.I.G., then went straight to the top of the music charts. Suge Knight and Death Row had stepped the game up that year before when Tupac sold a couple million copies of a double album and proved to everyone that real hip-hop artists could sell like crazy. Before Pac, it was thought that you had to be MC Hammer to sell that many units. But then Puff did ever better than that. That summer, he released his own album that had everyone in the effing world singing and dancing. I guess not far from a Hammer move anyway. My man had the radio on lock. The clubs on fire had people thinking that hip-hop was all about bright lights and shiny suits and smiled all the way to the bank. X, on the other hand, still lived in the dark. See, whenever he's in the dark, y'all, don't forget that ninja. All dark means crack. That's what dark means. Dark means dark. Dark place, in a dark place smoking crack. Living in the dark means living somewhere smoking crack. I never saw any bright lights around me. Nothing about my Timbs and hoodie was shiny. I couldn't hate on what Puff was doing, but I wasn't with it. So when Liar said that he didn't want to change anything about me, that all he wanted to do was find me as large of an audience as possible for my music, and in fact taking it back to the streets was going to be the idea behind how they wanted to market and promote me, he said all the right things. DMX, Rough Riders, Def Jam, just let me do my mother hunchy thing. Look, every time I work, you always got to be this pig. Why? Towards the end of 1997, some of the songs that I had done guest verses on were starting to get played on the radio. There was The Lox, Money, Power, Respect, LL Cool J's 4321, Cameron's Pull It, and Mace's 24 Hours to Live. Who is the Last Guy? Angie Martinez, the afternoon DJ on Hot 97, said on the air when she first heard the song. At that time, Puff was actually trying to sign me to his label. He kept telling Wah that he would offer me double whatever Def Jam's money was and give me some more dough for myself. I guess he didn't think that I was too hard anymore, probably because he saw the reaction of his own crowd. Well, I'm glad you didn't take the deal, because DMX probably would have burnt Puff. One night, Gotti brought me to meet a friend of his named Al Monday. Gotti said a video director he knew named Hype Williams was making a film loosely based on Monday's life and wanted me to talk with him for a minute to see if I had a feel for the guy. After a few minutes, I told Gotti that while I didn't know his friend personally, he was like one of the many characters that I crossed paths with in the hood. And because of that, I knew who he was. I could read his behavior and understand why he did the things he did. I didn't know that Hype was stuck without anyone to play this role in his film, or that it was a couple of weeks before filming was supposed to begin. But after Gotti's recommendation and a subsequent audition, I was cast in the lead role in Belly. It was the first time that I had ever thought about acting. On May 19th, 1998, Def Jam released my first album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard album chart and sold more than 250,000 copies in its first week in the stores. Later that summer, Def Jam challenged me, Wah, and Darren to deliver another album right away. And when Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood was released on December 22nd of that same year, it sold more than 700,000 copies. Safe to say, Liar never lost his job. Earl, I'm letting you know that we're getting married when you come home, Tishira said to me before I went on tour for my second album. I'll take care of all the arrangements while you're working, but we're getting married. I know that's right, Tishira.
Hey, do my favorite go-go song. Taking a ride on the east side, made a left on MLK. What a beautiful day, what a beautiful day. Riding high on the west side, looking for a hood rat to play. Won't you come out and play? Won't you come out and play? Hey, taking a ride. Hey, hey, on the south side. Ooh, ooh. Hey, hey, hey. We like that good. Say what?